Have you ever felt stuck? If you're like me, it's a familiar feeling, and it's one of the most frustrating feelings you can ever go through, especially when you can't figure out why. It's like you know what you need to do, but for some reason, you just can't get yourself to do it. You feel stuck, you can't take action, and then maybe, if you're like me, again, you double down and beat yourself up about it. If that's been you, don't worry. What you're going to learn today is going to teach you that sometimes what feels like being stuck is actually being pulled back like an arrow about to be released and setting you up for your biggest success to come. Welcome to Change Made Easy. Changing your habits, routines, and behaviors is hard. We make it easy. I'm Paul Leviton, and I help high achievers just like you who feel stuck bridge the gap between where you are and where you want to be. Traditional self-help doesn't work. It's either too rigid, too generic, or too overwhelming. My approach is different. I simplify change by making it so easy it can't not happen. Using my easier framework, I'll help you create habits, routines, and behaviors that stick so you can stop struggling and start thriving. It's that easy. Today, we're tackling the concept of stuckness, a profoundly human experience that we all go through. But what if being stuck and some of the habits that make you think the worst about yourself could actually help you rather than hinder you? If it sounds too good to be true, keep listening. Today's guest is Britt Frank. Britt is a licensed therapist, trauma specialist, and the author of the book, The Science of Stuck. And this book is a must-read for anyone who's serious about real-life change. When I read it, I highlighted it more than any book in recent memory. Britt blends neuroscience, psychology, and real talk to help you understand not just how to get unstuck, but why you're stuck in the first place and why it might not be as big of an issue as you think. In this episode, Britt breaks down why some destructive behaviors can actually be functional, why calling yourself lazy is just scientifically inaccurate, and she shares a surprising truth about motivation that reframes the entire discipline versus willpower debate. This is one of my favorite conversations I've had in a long time, and don't miss Britt's powerful micro yes technique right at the end. It's possibly the most actionable action step that you've ever heard. And with that, please enjoy this conversation with Britt Frank. All right, Britt. We talk about stuckness a lot on this podcast and in life in general these days. And in your book, one of the things that I read that you talked about was the positive side or the perks of staying stuck. Could you explain that to me?
Yeah, I did not like this particular part of my own healing journey, being told you're getting something out of your stuckness. I was so offended by that. Like, how dare you say that? I am clearly wanting to do everything right, and I don't like what I'm doing. And I was doing really bad things. Like, I was doing drugs, and I had lots of behaviors that I wasn't proud of. So to be told there's a benefit to even my worst. I either took it to the, are you victim blaming? Are you saying that I chose this? I got very spun up. But the point is, all behaviors are functional. They're not all good, but we would not be stuck with a habit, with a relationship, with anything if it was not doing a job. And so, if we're not going to talk about the hidden benefits of staying stuck, it's going to be really, really tricky to get unstuck. And then we'll spin and go, what's wrong with me? Nothing is wrong with us. It's that we often lack the information. One of the key pieces being, so what are you getting out of it? It can't be nothing. It has to assume it's something. What's the something?
Yeah. So if I'm hearing this correctly, it's even our negative habits, actions, patterns are serving a purpose, as otherwise we wouldn't be stuck in them. It's like you smoke a cigarette, even though it's bad for you, but you get immediate gratification in some way. And the same thing with relationships, and the same thing with whatever we're feeling stuck in. So understanding that though, how does that help me in changing it?
Yeah. So if you know the job that the thing is, it's not enough to just say, drugs bad, sobriety good. Objectively, obviously that's true. I'm not making a case for meth, but like that's too simplistic for how complex people are. And I'll give you a really extreme example. And this was the one where I got really pissy and thought someone was victim blaming me, where I was in a really chaotic relationship where there was a lot of domestic violence going on. Not my fault. Never, ever the fault of person. This like caveat, disclaimer, abuse is never the fault of the person being abused at any age, any time, for any reason. Okay. With that said, what was the hidden benefit of me being in a very, very chaotic relationship? Well, if I was with someone that was that bad, then I must be good. And I could justify, well, they're doing worse things than me. So I'm okay. And so the job that that relationship was doing was helping me to avoid all of the really not so great parts about me. But as long as I didn't know that that was contributing to that situation, I couldn't solve for it. And I was so afraid of the shame that, like, I didn't want to sit with the shame of my choices and my things. But if I didn't know that I was afraid of my own shame, I was going to keep on these relationship patterns in an effort to avoid it. So we have to know the job that a behavior is doing. And if you ask someone, what are you getting out of having bad relationships? What are you getting out of having messed up finances? Most people will sincerely say, nothing. I'm getting nothing out of this. I really want to change it. But we have to change the answer from nothing to the something, or we're going to stay stuck. Not always, but often.
Hey, real quick, we'll be back to the show in just a few seconds, but right now I have to ask you for a huge favor. If you're getting value out of this episode so far, take 2 seconds and share it with a friend. I mean, right now, literally, hit the little share button and send it in a text to your roommate or your cousin or your mom or your brother or your sister. Seriously, spread the love. If you like what you're hearing, then that's the best way that you can show support for this show. Because maybe you're like Eliza Kay, who said, "This podcast is both warm and inviting, but real enough to push and motivate me." Or you're like Dalton, who said, "Paul is an amazing host, and his podcast is a must listen." Don't you want to share this awesomeness with your friends and family? Don't be a gatekeeper. It only takes a second. It helps me grow and reach a new audience, and you seem like a genius friend who recommends new, awesome podcasts. We all win. All right, go send that text, and now let's get back to the show. Makes a lot of sense. Is that why in your book you refer to being stuck potentially as a gift for some people?
A gift, kind of tongue in cheek. It's not a good gift. It's not a fun gift. It's not like that's a gift that you want to return immediately. Like, no gift receipt necessary, just send it back. But pain avoidance is one of the quote gifts of being stuck. If you never risk anything, you don't have to worry about failing. So someone who sits in a room dreaming about all the things they want to do, well, if they don't do it, they don't have to fail. And that is a gift, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, of being stuck. You don't have to risk relationships or money or esteem or anything if you don't do the things. And so the hidden gifts or the hidden benefits are not intended to justify or shame. It's not like, see, you're getting something out of it, therefore it's your fault. No, it's you're getting something out of it. That is just information that we can then use to solve the problem.
Yeah, I talk about this a lot to my clients and just people in general, where to me, as you said, it's not like a shame thing. It's actually a benefit, where it's like, if I understand that everything I do is for my own benefit, then it makes sense that I do negative things because I'm getting something out of it. Now, usually the challenge is that it's something that's giving me a short-term benefit to my long-term detriment. And this is where people get confused. I think we talk a lot about delayed gratification, where it's like, oh, well, you got to be able to delay gratification. And I think that it's sometimes less about delayed gratification and more about the fact that in the moment, we're not realizing that we're actually getting that benefit. Because like you said, of course we want the thing down the road. Of course we don't want to be smoking cigarettes, or we don't want to be in that negative relationship or whatever it is. But if it were that simple, it would be done already. And so when I talk about this stuff, a word that comes up often for me, again, in my practice, in my podcast, when people write in and things like that, is motivation. And that's one of those things where nowadays, if you go on Instagram, if you go on TikTok, people say like, you can't rely on motivation because motivation is like an emotion. It comes and it goes, and you like, it's either there or it's not. And it's something that you have to learn to just use willpower or something like that. But to me, I'm like, I don't understand the difference between being motivated and having willpower, or having grit, or having discipline. So how do you look at motivation playing into creating the change and getting you unstuck?
I love that question. And I sort of made a snarly face when you said motivation, because I do agree that motivation is often overrated. And the science shows if you wait to feel before you act, likely you won't act, because usually feeling motivated comes after you go, not before. Like I feel fine once I get to the gym, but it's getting there that's the problem. So I'm a big advocate of science says motivation comes after, not before. But like what you said, well, what's the difference between willpower and grit and resilience and motivation? A better question than delayed gratification, even, is which part of me is being motivated right now? Because let's say I'm sitting on the couch and I want to go to the gym and I'm not. Okay, well, it's not delayed gratification. It's the part of me that is motivated by comfort is right now in charge of driving my ship. The part of me that's motivated by my fitness goals is locked in the trunk of the car. And the part of me that is motivated by the familiar, that's the part that's driving. So rather than I want to feel motivated, the question is which part of me is being motivated and by what? And am I okay with that? Sometimes it's appropriate to be motivated by comfort, but not always.
You said there being in the familiar. Could you expand what you mean by that?
Yeah, this was sort of horrifying for me to discover in my personal recovery and in my clinical work. Brains are not wired for success, brains are wired for survival. Period. And so, brains, from what we know, are more interested in patterns and predictions than in our goals and our ambitions and what's on our vision boards and our Pinterest boards and whatnot. And so, anything that you do to deviate from a pattern, even if it's a bad pattern, the brain doesn't recognize I am breaking my pattern of not working out. That's good. All the brain is going to start with is, uh-oh, she's breaking a pattern. All pattern change equals bad equals lion is going to kill me. Therefore, don't do the thing. And if we don't know that even good change is going to get recognized by your brain as deviation from the pattern, shut the system down, then we're not going to do things and then go, what's wrong with me? And then that shame is going to release cortisol, which is going to create more fight, flight, freeze, which is going to create more shutdown. And so this idea that being mean to yourself isn't useful isn't this soft, generic, Instagrammable saying. There's real teeth to it. When you yell at yourself, you're releasing stress hormones that are going to further interfere with your goals. So we need a better way.
Yeah, if being mean to yourself worked, it would have worked already,
We'd be good to
right?
go. All of
Right, right. It's funny, even as like a coach. So I started as a personal trainer, and people would always ask me, they're like, "Oh, like, are you the type of the kind of rah rah whatever drill sergeant type?" And I'd always be like, if I thought yelling at you would get you your goals, then I would yell at you. But it's just not how it works. Unfortunately, the reality, the science is there, and it's just not how things work. But so you said, all right, we get into the spiral, shame, and then cortisol, and more shame. And a word that comes up a lot in that shame spiral is laziness. And something that you said in your book, and I wrote this quote down, is that being lazy is a moral judgment, not a biological reality. So could you explain what you mean by that?
Yeah, like the word lazy, which people will throw around to mean you should be doing a thing, you want to be doing a thing, you're not doing the thing, therefore you're lazy. Okay, great. But that's a really moral way of looking at what might be a purely physiological situation. You know, we're meat puppets in these biological suits first. And if we don't address the fact that we have a nervous system and we have a brain and we have cells and organs and tissues that do things, and we go to, well, you're just a lazy person or you're just a bad person. One, that's not accurate. And two, it's not useful. Lazy. So someone laying on the couch, we'll just go back to the couch example. So I put this in the book. So a parent comes to me, and I'm just making this up. It's sort of like an amalgamation of all the work I've done. A parent comes to me and says, my kid's really lazy. They are done with school. You know, they've graduated high school. They're not doing anything. They lay on the couch. They smoke pot. They play video games. They do nothing all day. They're lazy. Okay. Well, I could make a case for, I'm not saying this is good, but if we take the morality off of it, your kid is laying on whose couch and watching a TV that who paid for, eating food in whose fridge. It sounds like your kid isn't lazy. They're just really smart, because if they don't have to do things, why would they? If you're enabling them to not move and to not go do things from a purely physiological standpoint, why would they? Why would they expend energy and resources unnecessarily? That's not how brains are designed. It's not an excuse, but it does make sense. I wouldn't call that lazy. I would call that, well, it's not good, but it makes sense. There's nothing that doesn't check out about this. They don't have to, therefore they don't. So is lazy really the problem? I don't think so.
Yes, so good. I love you said there, uh, is it accurate and is it useful? And I think
Mhm.
that that is such a good line of questioning for any negative self-talk, any negative thought spiral, any negative judgment that we put on ourselves. And like usually with just that line of questioning, those two things, it usually falls apart at is this accurate?
Mhm.
And if it doesn't completely fall apart by is this accurate, it 100% falls apart by is this useful? And you know, something I use with a lot here, I've spoken about it in past episodes and I use with clients is like, what's the story I'm telling? Is this story helpful? And is there a better story?
Mm.
And all of it comes down to self-talk. So, how do you look at self-talk in terms of taking control or being able to use it to our advantage when it's usually something that's running in the background and running subconsciously, often against us?
Mhm. And this is what my new book is about, all the voices in our head and how to help them get along with each other, because we use such aggressive metaphors to talk about our self-talk. I'm going to banish the inner critic. I'm going to kill my ego. I'm going to battle depression. Like, okay, but like, who's going to win if it's you versus you? And the part of you that wants to do the bad thing and the part of you that wants to do the good thing, if they're both still you, why are we trying to annihilate these parts of ourselves? You don't need to kill your ego. We need our ego to filter life and to create some sort of like social self that can collaborate and work together with. But like, what if we changed our self talk to, let's just assume that all the different voices in your head are on your team and they're just really unskilled and uncoached? Like, even the highest level athletes who play at the top levels will have a coach, because a team without a coach isn't going to work. That's why they're there. And so I would say, who's the coach in charge of all the voices in your head? Most people don't have one, because our self-talk isn't a coach with a team. It's just I'm lazy, I suck, I'm unmotivated. It's like, no, there's a member of your team who's feeling away. What do they need right now? A good coach knows sometimes encouragement is what's needed. Sometimes a swift kick in the ass is what's needed. Not in a shamey, punitive way, but just in a, the medicine for the situation might not be, oh, poor you. It might be, I hear you, you're not wrong. Now get up and let's do the thing. And so we have to approach our self talk much more like a coach and a team than the, it's just me up there. Like, it's just me alone in my thought. It's not true. So there's a comedian I love, Pete Holmes, and he talks about how weird it is that like you can say to someone, sing happy birthday in your head, and then you hear it. It's like, okay, well, who's singing right now and who's hearing the singing? But we take it for granted that this stuff just happens in our minds and there's nothing that we can do about it. You can talk to yourself. You could actually listen to, you can dialogue, you can have a whole conversation with different parts of yourself. And that's not insanity. It feels weird because we're not taught how to do it. But like, team meeting is a much better approach. End rant.
I love that, and it, you said something right there that really, like right at the beginning there, that really kind of, I don't know if you saw my face, but it's just something like a light bulb just went off in my head, or it's like if it's you versus you, then you have to lose. Like, it's
Mhm.
like we say this so the time. There's literally written on the wall of so many gyms, and everyone says like, "Don't compare yourself to others. Comparison is the thief of joy." And Instagram and comparison, it's like it's not you versus them, it's you versus you. But it's like then you can only lose. So
Right.
that's just such a, I don't know. That just really, I'm going to do something with that down the road. So I appreciate that.
Call me. Happy to collab.
Yes. All right. So I would love to, again, I'm picking apart your book. I took so many notes for anyone listening. I have links to Britt's books in the show notes. But her first book is what I'm basing a lot of these questions off of. And I took so many notes while I was listening. I actually listened to the audiobook. I took so many notes. I had to stop and like ponder on so many stuff. But something I would love for you to talk about is the difference or similarities, or however you want to go with it, with feelings, emotions, and thoughts.
Mm. Yeah, those get mixed up quite a bit, especially if you're fighting with a partner. I just really feel like you don't listen to me. It's like, okay, well, that's actually not a feeling. That's a thought. That is an interpretation. And when we use feelings, thoughts, and emotions interchangeably, we wonder why conversations derail or why communication breaks down. So this isn't just me being a word nerd. It actually matters. So what is a feeling? A feeling is and different schools of thought will argue which is which. In my opinion, and you do you. If you're listening, take what's useful, leave the rest. In my understanding, a feeling is called a feeling because you can feel it. It's physiological. So I have a sweaty set of palms and my stomach is clenched, my jaw is tight. Those are feelings. Pure physiology. There's no story attached to it. It's just a description of what's happening in your body. Okay, so that's a feeling. And then an emotion is when we add an interpretation to that feeling. So a set of sweaty palms, clenched jaw, and a tight stomach, if my story is, or if my thought attached to that is, I'm about to start this race that I've been training for months to do, I might call that emotion excitement. I take the physiology, tense stomach, tense jaw, sweaty palms, attach a meaning to it. I'm about to do the race. That produces the feeling, excitement. But I could take that same exact physiology, right? Tight jaw, sweaty palms, clenched stomach. And if my alcoholic partner is walking through the door, the thought attached to that is, oh no, my alcoholic partner is home. And then the emotion might be fear. And so emotions are the feelings plus the thoughts. When you attach a thought to a feeling, that creates an emotion. Because feelings, by definition, are neutral until we attach a story to them. Like clenched fists could mean you're about to get into a fist fight, or it could mean you're about to have an orgasm. We don't know until we attach a story to it.
Yeah, that's so good. Thank you. That's so helpful. And again, I heard this in your book, and just hearing it again, it makes so much sense. That I love that you said word nerd, because I'm the same way, and I think that words are so important, because the words that we use are the thoughts that we have, and that becomes our reality. So it can seem sometimes like we're nitpicking, but I think that it's something that actually does matter, because when we can control our words, we can control our reality. So going into more words that you used in your book, why do you not like the term anxiety attack?
Yeah. God. Okay. Sorry. It really again, this idea that we have to be at war with ourselves all of the time. Like if you look outside, the world right now is pretty chaotic. It's bananas. It's on fire everywhere. At the end of the day, I don't want to be fighting a war inside my head. And when we call, and again, is it accurate and is it useful? First of all, is it useful to call anxiety an attacker? It's not helpful. Two, why is it not helpful? Because calling it an attacker is going to release more stress hormones. Now I'm afraid because I'm afraid. Now I have anxiety about having anxiety. It's also not accurate. Anxiety is not this invisible, mystical, evil creature that waits for you to feel good for 5 seconds and then pounces on you. Anxiety is like the check engine light of your brain's dashboard. If I'm driving my car and my check engine light comes on, I don't say I'm having a check engine light attack. I don't call myself check engine light disordered. The light's just a signal that something needs some attention. And so, I would never bring my car to a mechanic and say my check engine light is on and accept that mechanic telling me your check engine light is on, therefore you have check engine light disorder. And this is just who you are now forever. But we do that with anxiety. I go to my doctor and I say, I have anxiety, and they go, great, you have an anxiety disorder, and this is who you are. Anxiety is I don't like it. I've had it my whole life and it sucks. And anxiety is an information source, not an attacker source. So it's not an anxiety attack. It's an It's just anxiety. I have anxiety. Oh my gosh, my anxiety is flooding through me right now. My warning light's going on. But if you think the enemy of your well being is attacking you from the inside, you're screwed because there's no escape.
Yeah, so powerful. Again, going back to the you versus you thing, or just the words that we choose being important. And yeah, my anxiety is attacking me. It puts us in that victim mentality that you mentioned in the beginning. And I think breaking out of that, it gives us that sense of agency, that sense of control. It's so easy to fall. Oh well, it's not my fault. I have anxiety disorder. I'm an anxious person. There's nothing I can do about it because that's just me. But once you accept that, it becomes limiting. And when you push that to the side and you go, like you said, this is just something that's happening to me. It's a feeling, a physical sensation in my body, but that emotion that I get to choose the meaning behind it to drive that emotion. So I really appreciate that distinction. I know in your first book, The Science of Stuck, you have an accompanying workbook, the Getting Unstuck workbook. I would love if you could share one or two of the activities that you have in there. Like if someone's listening right now, they're like, yeah, like this is exactly me. Like I
Mhm.
my negative self-talk, like I try to get myself up off the couch. And when I don't, I call myself lazy. And like just the stereotypical things, like we can go down the list. I think that when people listen to this, just like I've been nodding my head along, for people who aren't watching, who are just listening to video, I've been nodding my head and chuckling the entire time, because this is just real life human shit. And all humans, I think, can align with what you're saying. So, what are one of the two most basic places where, if you're just like starting to work through this stuff, that listeners can take away today?
Yeah. And I have 5 gajillion exercises in that workbook. I don't know if I'll ever do a workbook again. That's hard. That was a lot harder than writing The Science of Stuck. The first one is, if you're feeling anxious, before you say I am, like, or any feeling, whether you're angry or anxious or hungry or whatever, instead of I am, just switch the language and say part of me is. Why? Again, I'm not just being a word nerd just to argue over the semantics. When you say a part of me is angry, a part of me is anxious, a part of me is sad, that leaves room for something else to be happening. That leaves room for, like, the major spiritual traditions would call it the witness or the observer or the higher self or whatever you call it. When you say a part of me is feeling away, that leaves room for another part of you, or what we call the self, capital S self, the conductor, the team captain, the coach, whatever. Part of me is feeling away. Great. I can use the other resources in my head to figure out what's needed here. The 12-step tradition uses the acronym HALT: hungry, angry, lonely, tired. So use that. Part of me is feeling away. All right, before we assign any meaning to this, am I hungry, angry, lonely, or tired? If so, attend to that before you tell yourself this is just who I am. So switch I am to part of me is, and then assess, am I hungry, angry, lonely, or tired in the moment?
Yeah, that's a great one. I actually did an episode on HALT just a few weeks ago.
Oh,
So
nice.
for anyone listening, can go back. It was a solo episode that I did specifically about that acronym, because it's so powerful. And again, I've done a lot of my work in the nutrition and fitness and that space. So it's always something I go back to with clients. And just like, again, it's, and not just for weight loss or anything. It's just like,
Mhm.
I'm snapping at my partner. I'm being obnoxious at work or something like that. It's like, maybe I'm just hungry, grab a Snickers. Right. So one thing that, again, like I come back to these, like, kind of, I don't know, like these ambiguous ideals, right? Like motivation, okay, like things like that. Something that I hear people talk about a lot too is just like balance, right? I just want to find balance in my life. But when I hear you talk about balance, you talk about it a little bit differently. So how do you feel about people finding balance in their lives?
I don't like that word as it pertains to life. Like, I get balance in terms of physiology. Balance training is important. Yes, you should stand on wobbly things because that's great for your body and your nervous system to learn to adapt and find your sense of balance. But the problem with this idea of a balanced life, because what does balance mean? A balanced scale is equal on both sides, right? Like, that's the definition. Equal weight on both sides is balance. But anything that we care about is going to upset the balance of your life. Like, I'm going to give myself equal time to every single hobby. Each of my things, each of my people is going to get 20. I'm going to spend 20 minutes with everyone important to me this week so it can all be balanced. Well, that totally ignores the reality that maybe one of your relationships actually needs 20 percent of you, but another one needs 80% of you. Anything that we really want in life, passion, purpose, excitement, adrenaline, contentment, satisfaction, none of those things requires balance. So my argument is, rather than look for work-life balance, a better thing to shoot for is work-life alignment. Are my choices aligned with my values? Are the things that I'm doing aligned with who I say I am? If I am a person who keeps my word and I tell myself I'm just going to have one glass of wine and then I have six, well, I've just broken my word. That's not in alignment with my value of being honest. If we're in alignment, the balance thing, it kind of takes care of it takes care of itself. When I'm writing a book, I am not balanced. I am like an insane person. Like, I understand why many writers throughout history have been substance addicts, because it's hard and you go into this hypomanic state where you forget to eat or sleep, and it's just like words, words, words. I suck. Oh my God, that was great. That was amazing. I'm transcendent. Oh my God, what do I know? I should, and everything in between. It's a very unbalanced process, but that's in alignment with my identification as someone who writes. I also really love my husband. And so I make sure that once I'm done in a writing stage, I shift into spending time with my husband and my friends. And so if you're in alignment, the balance, that takes care of itself.
Yeah, it's such a great way of looking at it. I had a guest on the show, Dr. Shante Cofield. This was years ago, and one of my first guests. And but this always stuck with me. She's a physical therapist, and not talking about the physiological balancing, but she said that people talk about balance as if it's a static thing, but it's balancing. It's a balancing act. If you're standing on a tightrope, you're never static. It's a constant act of balancing and rebalancing and rebalancing and rebalancing, and that's what balance is in life. And the way I look at it now, it's like, yeah, balance is 50-50, but it's also 80-20, and it's also 99-1. And at different times in your life, you're going to need those different types of balance. So I think that when we think of it as this thing, it's like, I'm just going to find it, like you said, work-life balance, and then I'll be good. And then I'm balanced, and then I can meditate. It's like, I don't think that exists. But I think finding, as you said, an alignment with your values, and knowing that sometimes you're going all in on writing and there's other things are going to have to take a back seat, is a very healthy way to look at all this. So I appreciate you sharing that, Britt. And as I come to the end here, I'm going to wrap up with the two same questions that I ask all of my guests. The first is, what is the change that you want to see in the world?
The change I want to see in the world is people to stop thinking that they're the enemy of themselves. Like, if we all were a little bit more at home in our own minds, I think the world would probably be a little bit less hard to live in.
I can't imagine you're wrong. So if the last question is, if you had one action step that listeners could take right now today, you have a whole workbook full of them, which people can go and click in the show notes. But one action step for anyone who's listening, who's like, okay, I just want to make this a little bit easier, whatever change they're trying to make, just a little bit easier. As soon as they take their headphones off, as soon as they're going about their day today, what would that action step be?
Yeah. And I have one. I call it a micro yes. So a micro yes is taking a step so small you feel like a jackass doing it. Like, you just feel ridiculous. Like, what's the point in doing something this small? A micro yes, if you're listening to this like in bed while scrolling and you know you're not going to get up, a micro yes for your gym goals might be literally just like pick your shoe up off the floor and throw it at the door. That's all you have to do today. A micro yes is something that you can get done right now. And that's going to release a little microdose of dopamine. And that's going to give you a little bit of motivation. And then micro yeses build on top of each other. And that's what creates momentum, which is much better and sustainable than motivation. But a micro yes, take the smallest step you can think of and then break it into 15 smaller pieces. That's a micro yes.
Before you go, I just have to ask you for a huge favor. If you enjoyed or got value from this episode at all, then take a moment and leave a rating and review in the podcast app that you're listening or watching on. If you like the show and you want me to continue to create more episodes and be able to get awesome guests that will help make changing your life easier, then this is the best way you can show support. You can leave a 5-star review on iTunes, like Eliza K, who said, "This podcast is both warm and inviting, but real enough to push and motivate me." Thank you, Eliza. Or you can be like Dalton, who said, Paul is an amazing host and his podcast is a must listen. Thank you, Dalton. And thank you to all of the over 100 people who have taken the time to rate and review this show 5 stars on iTunes, or the dozens who have left 5-star reviews on Spotify. It only takes a minute, and it helps me grow, it helps me reach a new audience, and it lets me know that this is helping someone, which just feels good. All you have to do is go to the show page of whatever app you're listening to and hit the little 5 stars. Or go to the comments section on YouTube and boom, that's it. And if you really want to show love, take a screenshot when you do it and tag me in your stories on social media at Change Made Easy, and I'll shout you out in an upcoming episode. All right, go leave that rating, and I'll see you back here every Tuesday and Thursday with new episodes of Change Made Easy.